the man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Happy New Year. Happy 2026. Welcome to the show. If you're a new listener, if you're an old listener, I am so happy to have you here. My name is Corinne Fisher. I am a stand-up comedian and a former mayoral candidate right here in New York City, where we are live streaming from right now. What a first week of the year. I mean, chock full of news. Again, that's the one thing I have to say to Donald Trump. He never leaves me short on news. Not like that, not like almost dead Biden, who continuously left me with very little news to report because things were just kind of overall chill, So here we go. Lots of stuff. Mike, what is the number if people want to call into the show? I feel like we have had so much news recently. We haven't had time for callers, but if you want to.
Yeah, I think the last one who gave it a shot was me.
Yeah, you did. That's true.
So the number is 201-308-3510. Please be prepared to answer my call screening text. Lines are open.
Yes, and obviously, I ask that you only call in if you are listening in real time and have something to share about the topic that we are on. If not, just wait till we're on that topic. Or if it's completely out of left field, you can email me at withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com, and maybe we'll bring it up on the next show. I've been getting a ton of emails recently. So again, I do look at them all, but if you sent me something and it was really important to you and I haven't gotten to it, I apologize. It just wasn't fitting in the structure of the show, but I have been inundated with emails recently, a lot of weird guest pitches, a lot of interesting stuff going on. So, we're going to keep this, we're going to keep this show going and try to incorporate everything that people want to talk about. But sometimes people email me and I got to be honest, something that I think literally only you want to talk about, which is, I love that. Everyone has something that is important for them, but I'm still kind of making a product that needs to be consumed by a good amount of people here. So that's why. But I'm happy to learn about it and read about it. All right. So that is the call-in number. I mean, guys, call me a Peruvian shaman, because did I or did I not say once Zohran won, everyone and their mother was going to announce that they were running for public office. And this is why, not that you needed any convincing, because you're already here listening to this show, but and now, again, a lot of people think I'm cocky. A lot of people think that, I don't think my own shit stinks. And I have to be honest, my finger just is continuously on the pulse. I knew exactly what needed to be done, which was regular people or not political people, not public servants, not people who are already public service, need to start throwing their hat in the ring to run for office. But what I also knew is now that every celebrity and semi-celebrity is going to think that they ran for office. And I'm going to take partial responsibility, at least here in New York, for that. And I know it to be true because all the people who are, celebrities or semi-celebrities who have thrown their hat in the ring, for 2029, are, have in some way come in contact with me, or said that I inspired them. And I was like, great, that's exactly what I didn't want to do. Again, we'll see how their campaigns kind of flesh out, but the amount of people who have already said that they are running for office, and it is literally January 7th, is a lot. So, I mean, in New York City, we have a couple people, but the most notable person, as far as celebrities, Michael Rappaport, he already said that he's running for mayor of New York City 2029. We have Spencer Pratt, who announced his mayoral run for Los Angeles. And then Trisha Paytas, she said that she's running or considering a congressional run. That is not official, but she did post a video of herself like eating rice out of Tupperware, Googling how to run for Congress, which, I think that's very much, I am familiar with her. I'm not like a super fan of hers, but she does come up a lot. So I am aware of her. And again, I don't want to say that there's, any of these people shouldn't run for office, but it is going into that area where it's like, all right, it's like, are you doing this because you actually have a thirst to serve the public, or are you doing it to be self-serving? Are you doing it to make a point? Like, what is going on here? And I certainly, when I ran for office, I was doing it really as a regular person, not as I just had the benefit of having some, access to a larger audience, which is, really mainly helpful financially because, the amount of audience I have in New York City is not enough to change the course of an election, but the amount of audience I have nationwide is enough to fund an election, not even a top tier election, but enough to fund an election for sure. And so I wanted to see if like a regular person could run for office. And like, as you know from this show, I was, asking for a long time to support one of you guys in a run for office, and then kind of no one was interested. And I know since then I've gotten some emails that you guys are like running for city council and things like that in your area or school board, and that's great, and I love that, and I hope that I was able to convey some information to you about what it's like to run for office publicly. But now what's happening, especially with someone like, a Spencer Pratt, who is, a reality TV star. I mean, I don't want to tell him not to run or say that I don't think he should run, because obviously a reality TV star is our president in his second term. But this starting the year off with like all these celebrities, influencer types, reality stars, like saying that they're going to run for office, it just rubbed me the wrong way, because I go, well, this is exactly what I had to fight against for the first part of my campaign. I had to fight against, is this a joke? I had to fight against, is this just a way for someone to garner more attention? And that was not at all the case. If anything, I confused my fan base further, because it's like, all right, well, you're in entertainment and now you're in politics, and now that I have to go back to entertainment, which is how I make my money, everyone's like, well, are you going to run again? It's like, well, no, I spent, a good amount of money and sacrificed a good amount of money running for office, because I didn't do stand up while I was running for office, so that everyone would know how seriously I was taking it, and that it wasn't some kind of a publicity stunt. So now I have to recoup my finances. I have to go back to working in entertainment, which is, what I want to do. And obviously you guys hear me having a bit of an existential crisis over the past couple of years. Is being an artist enough? But I really thought about it, and something that I think is true is that it's artists who first have to create the tidal wave of whatever is happening next culturally, and then it's politicians who ride that wave after. It's very rarely politicians who are brave enough to start something first. It's really artists who usually do that and then create the space in culture where politicians can then follow suit, because politics is just a lot more strategic and a lot less creative than art. That is just the way it is. So yeah, we'll get into these different bids for political offices, later in the show, but it's like, I am excited that more non-traditional candidates are running, but it's not, it's hard, because one of my main arguments with why I would make a good mayor for New York City, and again, why I think Zohran made the splash that he did, is because the mayor, and this is a specific role for especially mayor of New York City. This is not every public servant role does not require this. Like, Congress requires it less than mayor. But when you're a mayor, and specifically mayor of New York City, I would say like 50% of that role is that you have to have star power and be able to mobilize people. Even in Zohran's first week of running for office, a lot of what he's doing is public appearances, going to talk to people in person. And I'm not saying that it's performative, but like a lot of the role for it to work has to be like he has to keep the campaign going for these next 4 years, keep everything, recorded, keep sharing with us, have a really high level of transparency so that the constituents continue to rally for him the way they rallied for him when he was merely running for the office. For the role of New York City mayor to be successful in a way that fights against establishment politics, the only way to be successful is to keep the power of the people behind you, so that the power of so that the people will come out and rally or make calls or whatever it is to the higher ups who need to give the okay to the mayor of New York City to get these things done. Because again, why I felt it was completely fine for someone of my level of political experience, being none, but lots of, social and activism experience, is because the role is star power and mobilization. It's star power, it's mobilization. So you do have to have someone who's relatively good looking, in my opinion. You have to have someone who's relatively good looking. Zohran, fits that bill, especially for a frickin' politician, because you only have to be like a 6 amongst regulars to be a hot politician. I mean, so he's absolutely killing it in that department, and you have to be able to be a really good public speaker, really engaging, give speeches that are really going to rally the people, speak in language that is accessible, and continue meeting New Yorkers one-on-one, which was part of one of my favorite parts of running for mayor. It certainly wasn't dealing with any of the people who are already in establishment government. So again, like what he's doing makes sense, and so that's why it's not crazy that different celebrities or people in the public eye would transition to politics. It's just like, I question if they really know or have considered how much work it takes to do a good job and how little time they will have left for celebrity antics and things that they like to do in their free time. Because like I had truly cleared out all of 2025, and I was like, I'm ready to go. I don't need to have any personal goals this year apart from wanting to be of service to the city. And anyone also who announces their candidacy 1 week into somebody else's mayoral term, or any term for that matter, to me, and it's like, I certainly don't want to like target Michael Rappaport. He is a friend of mine, and he did, reach out to me, personally, just to pick my brain about my mayor's race. He actually DM'd me and he was like, "Did you really run for mayor?" And I was like, No, I did 6 months of really unfunny policy-based content because I thought that was the right direction for my Instagram. Like I stood outside of the, different police precincts in the freezing cold and went over how I think it would be best to approach people evading fares, because I thought that would be a highly clickable Instagram. We're like, what are we talking about? Yes, of course I literally ran for mayor. I also love the people who think that, who called me a grifter because of fundraising. I was like, do you know anything about how political fundraising works? Like, if we want to talk about things that it's very hard to be a grifter in, especially on like a mayoral level, in New York City because of the campaign finance board, like I am more on the books, and I'm very like on the books, but I am more on the books in 2025 and 2024 because they look at that, than anybody, because that's the level of financial transparency that they require. You have to set up a specific bank account that only some banks accept, a political bank account, There are so many banks that don't even accept it. All the money, there's a full post-election audit that I had been working on for months after I conceded with my treasurer. Every cent, I mean, like, even to like buy your campaign staff a meal is so hard to get through because it is something that you could consume and enjoy yourself. And I know it's hard to believe this. And I guess when you get higher up, people find craftier ways to get around these audits. But I got to be honest, not that I was looking to do any of this, obviously, but just to people who, and these are trolls, but I just want to say, like, to those trolls, you guys really have no idea what is going on or how much goes into this, because every nickel and dime of that campaign, I was questioned about why I didn't have a receipt for like 1.88-cent transaction at FedEx Kinko's because the head of my field team who was getting the petitions had to run and get an extra copy of something, and he forgot to get a receipt for it. And I knew in my head at the moment, I was like, that's going to be a problem later. But like, that's how on the books the campaign was. So whether you donated or not, just please know, like, to accuse someone of being a grifter on this level, like, you can look it up. Like, all my stuff is accessible, as it should be, right? But it's just so funny to me. I like, if you think that I took $100,000 and was just like throwing parties with it, it is so on the books. And again, that's why I love the Campaign Finance Board. And it was something that, prior to the 1970s and has gotten much more aggressive since then, but, started in Ed Koch's New York. And we should have things like this. Like, believe me, it was a pain in the butt for me. Spent hours trying to access, receipts from like Microsoft Outlook and stuff like this. But we got everything. Everything is so on the books. And again, I just wonder with a lot of these people who are announcing their candidacy, it's like I'm reading about it in news articles for a lot of these people, but I'm like, I didn't see a video of you. I didn't see what your platform was. I didn't like what kind of work have you done besides saying, like, I don't think the current person in office is good? If all you needed to run for office was saying, I don't think the current person in office is good, well, then almost every voter could vote. And as we saw, again, from Andrew Cuomo, a legacy politician, just mere criticism is not acceptable as a campaign strategy anymore. People don't want to just have you show up and say, that guy sucks, I'm going to be better. That's very negative. What people want to see is, yeah, I don't think this guy is doing a good job. Here's why. And most importantly, here is what I am going to do for you. Here is the timeline, and here is how I am going to get it done. Here are the ways in which, on a day-to-day level, I am going to make your life easier. That is what Americans are saying nationwide. And even when you look at Donald Trump's presidency, or campaign, even though he is not following through on what he said, that is what he won on. So let's be very clear. If you are any of these people running for office, you need to not just be saying this guy sucks. And again, in the, saying someone sucks and saying that you're running against them when the next election's not for, freaking 4 years and it's week one of their term, that to me is anti-New York or anti-whatever. Like, yes, I wanted to be mayor, but I'm not mayor, and I just got to deal with that. And I have to, furthermore, support Zohran or whoever won for that matter. Whoever won, even if it was frickin' Cuomo, not that I have to support him as a person, but I would have to either support or fight against things that he was doing for New York to make sure that New Yorkers are getting the best New York City and the New York City they deserve. That's what a true public servant would do. So to me, if like week one, you're saying this guy's evil and I don't trust this guy, like, is that pro New York or is that self-serving? And I don't know. It really troubles me. And this is why there is such a distrust in government. We certainly don't want people in the entertainment business, even though they have a lot of qualities that I think can, prove to be successful in politics. That's not a trend we want to start. And this is a trend that I was like, honestly, quite fearful of. A bunch of people who didn't really put a lot of thought into it, who did not spend months behind the scenes putting together policy and researching policy, just throwing their hat in the ring because they believe that, I don't even know what they believe. And this is deeply troubling to me. I knew it was going to happen, but I'm actually surprised that it is like so celebrity based. I was hoping that and I know this is going to happen too. I know, but just based on the numbers of the amount of people who applied to run for something, and so I never want to discourage any of you from running for office, but please know it is extremely difficult. And if you're going to do it, it is not of service to anyone to do it half-assed. When we have these congressional races, and I think we're going to very often these days now see congressional races or Senate races, with 12 plus candidates. And I think that's fine to have a choice, but all 12 plus of those candidates, if we're going to, divvy up money and finances in that way from constituents, you better be bringing something really phenomenal to the table. And I truly felt like my policies, I loved my policies. I was obsessed with my policies. I really felt like they were things that I had seen working in other cities, whether they be American cities or cities abroad. And I thought that they were things that were truly possible for New York that would benefit New Yorkers, in real time or very soon. So even if you didn't vote for whoever your representative is, if what they're doing you don't think is unethical, like, why don't you try to support them in a way that supports the people who live in the space? I don't know. I was just kind of really like, I was like, I knew this was coming, but and then the real Peruvian shamans, obviously, they predicted three things. They predicted the fall of Maduro, which has already happened. They predicted the end of the Ukraine war, which has not happened yet. And they also predicted that Trump will have a serious illness. So we're 1 out of 3 right now on January 7th. So that's what's going on now. Yes, Mike, you have a hand raised. Okay. I hope it's Michael Rappaport.
Oh, sorry. That was not going live to everyone else. We do have a caller. It is not Michael Rappaport. It is somebody who works, at one time, worked closely with New York politicians. Liz? Oh, hold on. Sorry. Let me just unmute this. Liz, are you there? What? Oh, sorry. There we go. Liz, are you there?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Liz. It's Corinne. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for calling. You said, Mike said you worked with New York politicians in the past?
I feel like I did a bad job of explaining. I didn't work with them. I was at Somos. Which I think you talked about last week.
Yeah, my goss about Somos. I would love to hear that. But what in particular are you calling about before I get into my New York City politics gossip?
I was just calling in because I thought maybe you would want to have a perspective because you're talking about everybody and their mother's running for a political seat after Mamdani won, and I was like, wait, I was at Somos. I'm probably the only person that was there that they listen to the show, or if they listen, they might not call in because apparently they're all busy doing rich people things.
Yeah, well, I definitely do know some other people who I know were at Somos who do listen to the show and who I know behind the scenes. But yeah, you're right. They probably would not call into the show. So thank you for doing so. Yeah, I would love to hear more about Somos and what went on this year, and if you do feel like a gaggle of people are running, or if that's not so. I mean, this is specifically the announcements that came out week 1 was very celebrity heavy and a certain type of celebrity. I do feel so. What went on at Somos though?
Okay, so backstory of how I got there. I'm a local archaeologist, and
How
I guess
cool.
because our sector is related to a lot of environmental work because you do archaeological surveys before they put up wind farms or solar panels,
Mm-hmm.
I guess we are energy sector adjacent,
Uh-huh.
and somehow we got invited to, it's got to be one of the major, I don't know if you guys have a monopoly or not on power, but whoever the biggest power provider is for the state of New York was throwing the event.
Right.
And they
Okay.
just were crazy patting themselves on the back about they're doing such good things for New York. And it was just really ironic because they weren't in New York and they kept saying, like, here in New York, but we're in Puerto Rico, we're in San Juan. And it was also really ironic because they're like, we're here to strengthen our bonds between New York and Puerto Rico. But none of this was translated or in Spanish. And notably, no Puerto Ricans were invited.
Oh,
The
my
only
God.
Puerto Ricans that were invited were my two coworkers, and they were invited because our white boss was invited.
Oh, boy.
So I thought it was very interesting, and I felt bad that that's how New York tax dollars are being paid because, like, I enjoyed the free food, but, like,
Right.
I have nothing to do with New York.
Yeah. No, I mean, believe me, when I walked into my first caucus last year and it was like brought to you by Amazon, I was like, kill me now. Um, but I am not at all surprised. And like the biggest power provider, if like you mean like who like does our electricity? I'm guessing because I'm guessing it was Con Edison, but is that big enough, or is there like some kind of umbrella over Con Edison, like the New York Power
There might
Authority?
be something really big. It
Okay.
didn't seem like a small, yeah, like your power company who provides electricity.
I mean,
to,
Con Ed is
like,
huge,
come
but I
down
just didn't know if they were like but that is the primary utility provider for New Yorkers. But anyway,
Okay, then
yeah,
that's who was hosting.
I
I just remember that they were the biggest energy provider in the state of New York, and
Interesting.
they were so committed to like. It was very funny because they kept talking about indigenous relationships, but like they literally didn't speak any Spanish or like try and interact with like any of the peoples that are from Puerto Rico. So it's very interesting to come in as this outer, more wealthy group and come in and then like not even try to interact with Puerto Ricans. They only interacted with New Yorkers, which are Puerto Ricans in New York City.
Right.
So it was interesting. It was very interesting that they were touting this community engagement and then going to a place that were not their constituents and also ignoring the local people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I always, I don't know. I just always found it quite weird that why are a bunch of New York City elected officials getting on an airplane and flying to Puerto Rico? It just seems like they're trying to get off the grid and get away from the people who voted for them to do shady shit. Like it just felt very weird. Like, why is that happening? And I mean, obviously like a way to like, drink and party and they want to go someplace warm on, on New Yorkers' tax dollars. That's also a thing. I mean, probably also a bit of like you get more bang for your buck there. And that's how they would probably try to spin it if we question them on it. But I don't know, like just thinking of like, if I'm elected mayor, the first thing I'm doing is going to some weird booze fest around no constituents in Puerto Rico and trying to rub elbows with establishment politicians. Did not feel like if I was elected mayor, what I would want to spend, that first week post-election doing. It didn't seem, I don't know. It seemed questionable. Did you hear any talk of anyone running for offices upcoming or?
That's a good question. I think I did hear people talking about who's running for the electricity board.
Oh,
but that was so boring to me that I
Right.
was like, this is not interesting to me. But there was a lot of chatter about Mamdani, and they weren't necessarily positive. A lot of them were very a little bit afraid. It was very interesting.
Afraid of what?
Perhaps I think of him. I think these people might have been wealthy enough and ripping people off enough,
right?
That they were a little afraid that he was going to come and accost them. I was by far the youngest person there, by 2 decades.
How
can
I ask? How old are you? Can I ask?
I'm 23.
Okay. That was in my head. I was like, are you 23? Nice. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's great. And, you definitely need people like you who have eyes and ears on the ground, in these kind of fancy, higher up places because, you have no horse in this race. I mean, you have a horse in the race as in your future, but you're able to report back. And that's what we need. We need people to be able to report back from these spaces really transparently. But that's interesting that you were so young. I mean, well, Zohran himself was at Somos this year, though. I know he was.
Yes, yeah, he was at the Hilton Caribe.
Right.
I remember because we saw the photos because we were trying to find him because we wanted to go like watch his speeches.
Right.
But it's very secretive. It wasn't like pre-announced, except for I think the New Yorkers knew, but none of the Puerto Ricans knew, which was upsetting because they were really excited.
Yeah.
But we were trying to find him. So yeah, he was at Somos, and then he went to the mosque. And the next day, my friend was actually at the mosque. She was very excited. Puerto Ricans were so excited.
Yeah.
For Mamdani to visit.
Right.
And it was interesting because like the governor right now is pretty rough. And so it's interesting to see them so excited, but then a lot of them, they do vote, but the way that they engage is a lot more laid back than people are about Mamdani right now.
Right.
So it was interesting to see people so excited about a politician.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not surprised that people were saying negative things, like people who are wealthy and powerful were saying negative things, because as we've talked about on this show, if Mamdani comes in and especially in one term gets done what he said is possible for New York City, that really reveals how much bullshit we've been fed by previously elected officials, and that's going to kind of undo the entire system, which I'm excited to see because, if he does a great job, that leaves more space for regular people to continue running for office. If he can't get done what he, says he's going to get done, then unfortunately, I think that we're right back to establishment politics, and that's a heavy burden for one man to bear, but I think if anyone's campaign can do it, it's definitely his campaign and his team.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking to me, and good luck with the rest of the show.
Thank you so much for calling. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. I love that. I'm obsessed with Somos. I'm obsessed with not going to Somos. I've actually been thinking all week about how much more it made me love AOC that she's never been to Somos, like as an elected politician. I just think that really speaks volumes about the kind of person she is. And not that if you go to Somos that you are a bad person as an elected official, but I think that it means that you are trying to really navigate this the business of politics without having to suck up to establishment politicians. And you are really just working as, a person of the people. But who knows? I mean, I'm feeding that into her. Perhaps she has her absolute own reasons for not going, but it just seems like, I really liked that. All right. So let's go into the enemy of the state right now. The enemy of the state this week obviously is ICE. They murdered someone today, so that is why they are the enemy of the state. I mean, they were
enemy of the state.
They were being the enemy of the state, but today they really went over above and beyond. I believe the last time that ICE murdered someone was in September of 2025. So, it is certainly not the first time they have killed someone, but this is a particularly high-profile killing. And this is, her name is Renee Nicole Good. This is from the New York Post. Renee Nicole Good, identified by mother as woman fatally shot by ICE agent in Minneapolis after she drove her car at officer. And it's very New York Post that they are using that language, because I saw the video from two different angles myself, video, phone, camera videos. And she most certainly did not drive her car at an ICE officer. There's an officers on, I think, two sides of it. It looks like there's a bunch of officers. This one person, I can't tell if, I think that is an officer. I couldn't tell from their hat. She backs up, but there's no one behind her. She is not putting anyone in danger. She's not going super fast. And then as she's pulling forward away from the officers, one ICE agent shoots through the driver's window multiple times, and that ended up taking her life. So it is very crazy to me that the New York Post, who continually problematic, but usually not misreporting, is using the language in their headline, "She drove car at officer." Because again, this is video that Americans can see. It has been highly circulated. I have seen it myself with my own eyes from multiple angles already today, the same day it happened. And she is not driving the car at the officer. Mike is rolling his eyes right now. Mike, please get on the microphone and tell me why you're raising your eyes.
I've seen the video myself too a number of times. You can't tell me there's not an instinct that might have kicked in for that cop saying this lady's driving a car at me. Like the car.
The officer who shoots is on the driver's side. The car is angled towards as if they're driving, the right, which is the passenger side. So it is absolute. She's not driving it into any of the officers.
No, the car starts straight and then turns away from that officer.
Exactly. So why is he shooting out of all the officers?
Because
certainly.
the car is coming straight first. The straight motion happens first. That's when the shots ring out, and then you see them.
No, she backs up first. She backs up a little bit first to then turn out of the way. I'm sorry.
I watched that video 6 times in this office here. I've only seen the one angle. I haven't seen multiple angles, which you say you have. So I'm just.
I say I have. I have.
No, I'm not. I'm not debating that. I'm saying I haven't. I've only seen that one angle, and from that one angle, me and everybody else who watched it said it is kind of debatable whether or not.
And where was that angle that you saw published?
I don't remember. It was just on someone's phone who you know pretty well.
Oh, what was it? WeHateForeigners.com?
Yeah. It might have been that Instagram account. Who knows?
Oh my God. And also, I mean, I'm sorry, if we can chase OJ, for miles and miles and miles, again, it's not high speed. It's on a residential street. Just move back. Again, it's not going towards them from any of the angles I've seen, but I just found this to be wild. I mean, we got Kristi Noem calling her a domestic terrorist, this woman. It said the woman gunned down by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. Tough, good thing Tim Walz is not running for re-election because Minnesota been having a hard time lately. Has been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, who described herself as a mother, a wife, and a poet. Good was identified by her mom hours after she was killed when she allegedly tried to ram ICE agents on a street in the city. Again, someone please send me an angle where she's trying to ram them. Renee was one of the kindest people I've ever known. Her mother, Donna Ganger, told in the newspaper. Video appeared to show her Honda Pilot making contact with an ICE agent as he opened fire. I mean, they're leaning on the car, so to get away, yes, they are making contact, but they're on her car. She's not on them.
Yeah, and all right, so the If she had made contact with the cop who actually shot at her, that would have been significant because there was distance. You know what I mean? That cop wasn't touching her car. That's what New York Post is making it sound like, and that's 100% not what happened.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I mean, it's just again, I'm watching the videos. I mean, even as a regular person, you've never, had a spicy friend who, while you were leaning on their car, tried to drive away. When you're leaning on a window and someone tries to drive away, especially at the speed that she did, you're not gonna get hurt unless you're a baby. These are grown men in full tactical, gear, just leaning on a car. A car can drive away with you leaning on it. You will not be injured. It's a fine thing to do. It was a running gag on the Wonder Years that Wayne would drive away when Kevin was trying to get in the car. I mean, we're talking about nonsense here. And I mean, again, I know it was going to happen. That's why I'm I always hesitant. And I think it's amazing that, people are out in the streets interacting and protesting against ICE, but it was only a matter of time before they were going to start taking protesters down like this. I knew it was coming, because not that you want to just let ICE run through your streets, but I do think sometimes, people underestimate what what ICE agents or what police officers are capable of unless you've really been close to them. So, as someone who, has been in many peaceful protests and a couple not peaceful protests, not peaceful, not on my end, not peaceful on the end of the NYPD, these people will ram you into a wall. These people will be violent with you. And as, many people kind of said, ICE agents are people who weren't accepted into the police department. So keep that in mind. Video appeared to show her Honda Pilot making contact with an ICE agent as he opened fire. President Trump and other officials have said Good's killing was justified. I mean, no surprise there. Then her mom says all kinds of nice things about her, which again, I'm sure is true, but we're trying to get to the news here. Oh gosh, she was apparently previously married to a comedian who died in 2023, also at age 37. Which comedian was she married to? Oh my God. I mean, who the hell? No, sorry. Now I just have to look at this up for my
Minnesota comic. Got to be John Panette. No,
is he dead?
Is he not?
I don't know.
I'd be shocked if he was alive.
Comic married to Rachel Good. I don't know. Can you look that up? I don't want to spend when I'm looking that up. I'm just curious, and it's going to eat at me.
John Panette's been dead since 2014. No, you want the comic. I'm looking it up.
Yeah. She was killed in a middle-class neighborhood in South Minneapolis. And again, it's also like these streets, they are residential streets, but like when you see the street, it's an extremely wide street. It's not like residential New York Street. It's an extremely wide street. So there is more than enough room for the car, for the people, for everything that's going on, for, not to ram into someone and also not to feel like you are in some kind of imminent danger. Like we're not talking about, SUV going down the streets of, the French Quarter in New Orleans or whatever, those tight kind of streets, where you would be taking bodies down just by going down the street. All right. Good was among several people who allegedly blocked the street with their vehicles to prevent the agents from moving. And there's one other car that you see in the shot, but at the time of the driver's death, there is absolutely there is not a blockade of cars. And also we've seen blockades work in other cities, like New York being a prime example of this, where enough New Yorkers. And this is mostly people in their bodies, not in their cars, because just of how New York City operates, and we're, a walking city, not a driving city, that they eventually leave. But this is what I'm talking about. These people will not stop at truly mowing you down or shooting you in the head. And I'm very interested to see how this plays out and what legal repercussions, if any, there are for this ICE agent.
Absolutely none. Timothy Ray Macklin Jr. is the comic.
I don't know who that is, but thank you.
No, I mean, she was labeled a domestic terrorist by Kristi Noem, which means that, this is a federal agent. The only one who can prosecute her is this federal agency. This was a person who did not wait on the scene for anyone to come by, for them to do a ballistics test, for them to speak to an officer, to talk to a psychiatrist, anyone.
And furthermore, there's a report, and again, I tried to trace this. I was only getting like the Sahan Journal or something, but apparently there was a doctor on the scene. I'm interpreting it as there was some, like a Minneapolis resident who also happened to be a doctor who witnessed this, who tried to approach Rachel and give her CPR, and I stopped the doctor from doing so. And then it was not until 15 minutes later that the EMS even showed up, and they also apparently were blocked. Like the ambulance was apparently blocked from ICE.
Yeah, and 2 minutes after the shooting, the shooter jumped into an unmarked vehicle and left the scene.
Yeah, he fled the scene immediately.
Which is that's definitely what innocent people be doing.
Right.
I also don't like the fact that this is a U.S. citizen. ICE has no jurisdiction over U.S. citizens. So why do I have an ICE agent running up to a car, grabbing at the door handle and screaming, "Get the fuck out of the car"? That's like, that's who trained this person?
No.
Like-
I mean, no. And again, they're expanding ICE so rapidly that when you just look at it from a logistical standpoint, these people can't be getting the proper training that you would need to do a job of this level. It's an impossibility.
Right. I wanted to. That was the question I was going to ask you. Actually, when I was calling in, I said I want to weaponize my incompetence and go and join ICE so that I can just mess up the rate. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, Mike, that would be the most. We would win some kind of an award for the most intense and committed investigative journalism happening, certainly on YouTube.
I'm not even talking about investigative.
Nick Shirley II over here.
I'm not even talking about investigative journalism. I mean, sure, it probably would turn into that for the heinous crimes I would be able to document left and right because these guys think they have immunity and that no consequences will ever come from their actions. So it seems like they're just doing whatever the hell they want.
I mean, I think what you would have to do is do that, stay really quiet about it until Trump's term is over. Hope for the next president to be someone who hates Trump, which, you know, the odds are forever in your favor there, and then get that information to him or her, and then hopefully that president could bring them to some sort of justice.
Look, yes, maybe, and look, that's not going to help people in real time
No,
who are
it's
being
not.
terrorized by these ICE agents.
I
So
know.
I'm saying go join ICE and then go get deployed and be like, whoops, I tripped, I fell,
So
I
just kind
shot
of a-
one of our guys.
So like a slapstick approach to it. I mean, I
Yes.
think day one, if you shoot one of your fellow ICE colleagues, I think you're gonna be at least fired.
No, if I clip him in the leg and I'm like, oh, I dropped my gun, my bad.
Oh, you're not killing him. You're just
No, I'm not trying to kill anybody.
Right.
I don't have a killer spirit in me, right?
right. You're a lover, not a fighter. Everyone knows that about you, Mike.
That's 100% not true. But I think I just draw the line. I'm not a killer, but don't push me.
Oh my God! Wow.
But I do think there is a thing where it's like, yo, if you are that big of a bumbling idiot with ICE and you just play it off as like, yo, I'm new on the job, my bad. You could probably last for like 8 months and help a couple people get away from ICE.
Okay, so the ultimate mitzvah, really.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I love the idea. Let me know how it
Weaponized
goes.
incompetence.
Right.
It's kind of my thing.
I mean, men have been doing it for years, so why not do it to be of service to the people? Good was among several people who allegedly blocked the street with their vehicles to prevent the agents from moving, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Agents got out of their blocked truck and ordered the woman to move her SUV. Again, they are not blocked at this point. It is an SUV in the middle of a hugely wide street. They're just doing it to swing their dick to show people who's boss. At which point, I wouldn't even be surprised if, for the new year, there was some kind of a meeting with ICE where they're like, you know what? People have been trying to stop us. Too many people in cities have been getting together and stopping us from doing what we came here to do. So you can be more violent. And if you accidentally kill someone, we'll send an unmarked vehicle to come pick you up, and we'll take care of it. We'll clean up the trail, At which point she sped toward one of the officers, pushing him with her vehicle. Again, that's not true. Watch the video yourself. As he spun toward the driver's seat window, he fired 3 shots into the car. Footage from numerous angles shown. Okay. And I mean, you see this, the airbag did deploy. It is splattered with blood. It is truly, it's a gruesome scene. She was shot at least once in the head and later pronounced dead at the hospital. The Department of Homeland Security called her a domestic terrorist who attempted to kill federal agents. One of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill him, an act of domestic terrorism, DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs Trisha McLaughlin wrote on X. Really, really, really crazy stuff. But again, not surprising. So just please keep this in mind. It is extremely noble to go out in the streets and fight against ICE. But I don't think that, I don't think it's going to. I don't want you to lose your life over it. And I think we can stop this without having people's, brains blown out in the street. I know a lot of people disagree. I know a lot of times people think like, it's time for violence. It's time for the, average American citizens to just start gunning down ICE agents. Like, and maybe it is, but I just don't, I never think that the streets filled with bloodshed is going to be the right way. But I know a lot of people disagree. And like, please, if you disagree, call me up and give me your strategy. I, like Mike, am just not a super violent person. Speaking of violence, it was we were celebrating an anniversary of January 6th yesterday, and it was just coming up again how all over, how clearly January 6th was funded by different special interest groups. The one that they were talking about most notably is Turning Point, and how Turning Point gave a hefty chunk of change to truly fund January 6th. Also, the heiress Julie Jenkins Fancelli of Public Supermarkets. She definitely was a big donor. Trump's own political committees, right? So it's like, it's not things that fund his own campaign, but like there are PACs that will support certain candidates. And some of his PACs and super PACs definitely were funding and obtaining permits for the rally. The Judicial Crisis Network, Women for America First, Moms for America were also financially connected to the rally. And the way they got around, got around this, a lot of these groups operate as nonprofits or social welfare organizations, which allows donors to be kept secret, which again then creates that dark money that we talked about, funding different Instagram and social media thought, what do I even want to call it? Like thought publicity stunts. I don't even know. Propaganda, I guess you could call it. I don't want to call it propaganda because it's not all incorrect, but some of it are. So it's basically dark money because you can hide the donors, but then still get a large amount of money without anyone having to be like socially responsible for the actions of their money. So I thought that was interesting and something that was definitely coming up again, and a reminder of, what Turning Point really was and what it stood for. And another reason that Charlie Kirk might be dead, we don't know. It's going on and on. Moving into the Patreon, thank you so much to all the patrons. We have so many amazing people who are contributing to make this show what it is. I appreciate you so much. All hail to our dictator, Christopher Fungi. Thank you so much for your amazing service to the show. And thank you to my capitalist pigs and my cuties. If you want to become a patron, you're going to head over to patreon.com/withoutacountry, and you can join for as little as $6 a month. It helps to pay for all the people who are doing amazing work on the show, producing, subscriptions to these news outlets and graphic design, things like that. I just got a notification today that the first piece of merch is hot off the press and ready to be sent out. So things will be, starting to be sent out very soon. And I can't wait to see you guys and all your merch. Definitely send me pics, tag me. Excited for me to wear it here on the show. All right, let's get into Girl now, and let's get into all these people who are running for office a little bit deeper. And Mike, if for any of these people you can find like an actual website, official registration, a list of their platform, their policy, what their platform is. I would love to see any of this. All I was finding was like news stories of announcements with very little besides the other guy who's in this position or the other woman who's in this position sucks. But I would love to, truly go over what these people are running on. So first we'll go.
I have Fox here has Rappaport's official campaign promises.
Okay, but does he have his does he have like a Rappaport for Mayor website up yet?
No, God, no.
Right. That's what I was confused because literally it was
Who's going to pay hosting for an extra 3 years? That's crazy.
oh my God. But I also from a strategic standpoint, I actually don't think I have a theory about the perfect amount of time to be running for office. And it's about a year, maybe 14 months away from the general election. That's when you want to start campaigning. I think campaigning for an extended period of time, as a lot of people are doing right now, I think if you guys are thinking of running for office, I think it's a huge mistake. People will tire of you. You need to keep up. You need to do it in a period of time where for that period of time you can really commit only to politics, because you're going to be under a much different lens once you announce your candidacy. You're going to be under you're going to be under a microscope in a way you aren't when you're merely a celebrity or a public person. So that's number one. Number two, you're going to run out of funding unless you start only on policy for several years and don't start fundraising until 12 to 14 months out, fundraising at high level. You could also start fundraising, keep the money, not spend it, and then just know that you're not going to get additional donations from those high-end donors after that. And I just think people are going to grow tired of you. I'm interested to see if people can even stomach Zohran Mamdani for, even his hugest advocates for 4 years without growing tired or him angering them in some way because people are so fickle. I think campaigning for 4 years is just a really, really bad idea, and something that, quite frankly, in a world where we're all so accessible through social media is I don't think it's sustainable in any way. Mike, so is this from regular foxnews.com or?
I'm seeing Fox 5 NY.
Okay, so that's what I have on, but maybe you have a different. It's Mayor Rappaport 2029. What we know, Rappaport made the announcement on New Year's Eve of last year. So I found out a couple days later that he even announced it. I found out when he messaged me and was like, can I pick your brain about running for mayor? And I was like, oh, I guess he's going to be running for mayor. Little did I know he had already announced.
You really did that, though, huh?
I just assumed. Wow. And again, I think he has a lot of qualities that people would be receptive to. You kind of have to be someone who's not who will say anything. Very ballsy, but I just don't think right now in New York that's what we're doing. I think he will succeed. The only way he does have a chance of winning, I think, is if Zohran does do a really bad job, because then we would go back to a completely different type of person, of which I think Michael Rappaport does fit that bill, right? And again, this is, it's hard when people in real life end up running for public office, because then you do have to look at them in a different way if they're running to represent you and your interests. So Mike, let's go over his policies.
Sorry, it seems like it's mostly I don't want it to. The system's a little messed up. It's mostly one big thing. I'll be running my campaign on the fact that nothing will be free.
Right.
You will be getting nothing for free.
Okay, so I saw that. I didn't know that was constituting an actual policy.
Well, it says, all right, so
platform.
This article says that he expanded on his campaign plans in a podcast episode linked under the initial post. I would rather light my ears on fire than subject them to a Michael Rappaport election special podcast. So I'm not going to give you the full details, but this is saying that his main stance is that nothing will be free.
And again, so when people are presenting platforms like that, Number one, it sounds unserious because when we know that cost of living is the number one thing that are affecting New Yorkers and Americans at large, why would we possibly think that would be a winning policy? And number two, it doesn't, like, that feels anti-constituent, does it not? Like, I'm a little confused. Like, how do we think this is a winning strategy?
Well, I mean, unless the
only for the rich.
Not necessarily. Like, the argument, look, I know a lot of people who are like, I don't want a free bus. I want a bus that's clean and on time.
They're saying so he's saying it's because it will get your attention, and it's kind of like my stance on free food. And this is, again, one of my more controversial stances. Just as a person, I don't love free food. And when a place advertises that it has free food or an event has free food, I always question what the quality of the food is going to be. So on that level, I understand. But to me, so I see what you're saying, but I feel like with that language, it just feels like and especially when it's coming from a celebrity who obviously has money, it just feels like, stop begging beggars. Like, that's what it feels like.
Being poor is so, like Paris Hilton in the Stop Being Poor shirt.
Right. It just feels like, okay, I see what you're saying. And, I am someone who I am bothered by people who evade the fare. And I don't think that the subway should be free, just because when you look at the costs of New York City, and I think the money would be, that you would lose in making the subway free. I don't think it affects people's day-to-day lives as much as some other services that we could provide for New Yorkers, right? So that's my reasoning for it. And I do think that fare evaders basically aren't team players, especially when we do have services in place for people who truly have trouble affording it. You fill out a simple application and you can get a Metro card, rest in peace Metro card, or you can get access to public transportation at a discounted cost if you have trouble. And I think that is fair. But fare evaders, they do piss me off, because it's like, am I the sucker now for paying the fee to get into the subway? It makes you feel stupid. And to me, if we're, fans of socialism now in New York City, well, that's not socialist, because we're not all getting the same under that. All right. So that's his big platform. And, we'll see. Oh boy. And even when Donald Trump won the first time, I didn't start out his presidency by being like, everything he does from day one sucks. Like, I agree that he sucks now, and I agree that he sucked many years ago, but I just didn't think that was the energy. I'm like, let's see, this is the person that we elected. Let's see what this person does. And if he is doing things that I truly feel are harmful to New York, of which, I got to be honest, I don't think Zohran has done anything in these first 7 days that I would constitute as being harmful to New Yorkers, then you could step in. But I don't understand why we're fighting someone day one if our common interest is to make New York City better. Yes?
That's not Michael Rappaport's interest. That's never been Michael Rappaport's. Michael Rappaport doesn't care about the city of New York. Well, Michael Rappaport cares about Michael Rappaport.
Well, you're saying it plainly, but I'm trying to assess it in a fair way, which is like, yes, that's certainly how it comes off. And it comes off for other people who I know who are less famous than me, so I'm not even going to give them airtime. One person announced their candidacy and again, DM'd me you inspired me. It's like, fuck you. I hope I didn't inspire you. Because someone announced again, I don't even know if it's a real candidacy. I looked it up. There's no official registration with the city of New York as of yet. I think it's probably too early to even do that, but announced that their platform was, I'm going to do everything that Zohran does, but I'm pro-Israel. To me, if that is your platform in New York City, to me it says are you even at all paying attention to what New Yorkers want or what is important to run the city of New York. And again, just completely redirecting the race into something that the mayor of New York does not have power over. And I know there are certain things like, Zohran Mamdani undoing Eric Adams's executive orders, and then I think saying he's saying he was going to put them back in place. I didn't even want to catch up with that because it was just going back and forth. But again, that needn't be the primary thing that you're doing when you're the mayor of New York, because it's just not. What are we even talking about right now? Second person who has announced his candidacy this week, and this one's rich, is Spencer Pratt, who you know from Laguna Beach. This is from Politico. Spencer Pratt, ex-reality star turned wildfire critic, is running for mayor of Los Angeles. And then that makes me go back. Anytime someone who's kind of known for being an asshole, all of a sudden, for a very concentrated amount of time, starts being a good person or performatively a good person, and then all of a sudden announces they're running for office. In my head, I go, oh, were you even genuinely being a good person at all? Or did your house just get burned down in the LA wildfires, which fucking sucks, whether you're a celebrity or not? That sucks and that hurts. And I do have a lot of empathy for those people. That's a really hard thing to go through. And I have friends whose homes burned down in that, and it is really sad. And I know it is a material thing, but you are losing a piece of yourself and your history, and that is sad for sure. But it's like, is this just some long play vendetta because Spencer Pratt was so mad that this happened to him? Spencer Pratt, when he was advocating for change in, fire policy, what did he always have in the back of my mind? Oh, my house burning down. Like, how can I turn this into something lucrative for me? And I understand that's how, like, quote unquote, successful people's mind works under capitalism. How can I turn this bad thing that happened to me into a thing that is, fiscally good for me? But it just really made my stomach turn. In the aftermath of last year's devastating wildfires, which claimed his home, Pratt has been a vocal critic of the official response to the blazes. And again, I'm not saying like bad or good for any of these people. I'm just saying like, let's have these people on watch. And I really, really hope that they are running for the right reasons. And I just don't know that they are. And that makes me sad. And I think that's going to make it much more difficult for non-traditional candidates to run in the future if it just all of a sudden becomes this circus because people saw Zohran win and saw an opportunity. Please keep in mind, yes, Zohran won. And yes, he went from assemblyman to mayor of New York City. And that is incredible. And he had very little experience in politics. But he ran an impeccable campaign. He had a team around him. He had the DSA backing him. The DSA had been planning this for years. So it has a very firm foundation. It's not just him deciding, one singular injustice had been done to him personally and then running for mayor. Former reality television personality Spencer Pratt announced Wednesday he is running for mayor of Los Angeles at a protest on the 1-year anniversary of wildfires that devastated parts of the region. Pratt, 42, grew up in the Pacific Palisades, and he and his wife, fellow ex-reality star Heidi Montag, lost their home in a fire that took 6,000 houses in and around the Palisades community last January 7th. Because while all this was going on, I was like, wow, finally he's using his fan base that he has and his standing as a public figure with all his advocacy work to really do good. And again, I'm not saying that just because you're on a reality TV show means that you can't be a public servant. Of course you can. You're a person who lives in a community just like the rest of us, but please take this seriously. Pratt has since attracted a large following in the fire's aftermath. posting regularly on Instagram and TikTok with fierce criticism of Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass for their handling of the blaze. Business as usual is a death sentence for Los Angeles, Pratt said from the stage at the They Let Us Burn rally in the Palisades Town Center, and I'm done waiting for someone to take real action. That's why I am running for mayor. Pratt declined to take questions after he spoke at the rally. Right there, red flag. You're on the day that you announce you want to be of service to the people, you won't take questions. And like it's unclear if they mean he wouldn't take questions from reporters or if he wouldn't take questions from constituents. More of a red flag if he wouldn't take questions from constituents. Still a red flag if you're not taking questions from reporters, because to me, I mean, I guess it means that you don't really have everything polished as of yet. But basically from the moment that you announce your candidacy, the way you move through the world has to change. And now, and the same goes for when you are, concede. So once I conceded, right, I was like, oh, people do not have access to me the same way they did before. That absolutely not. But while you're running, people do have a lot of access to you, and that is part of running for public office. So he declined to take questions after he spoke at the rally, but showed a Politico reporter photos of him signing official campaign paperwork to confirm his run. A political neophyte, Pratt is a long-shot candidate in a race in which Bass remains the prohibitive favorite to win re-election despite having taken a political hit for her handling of the response to the fires. After rising to fame as a bad boy character on the mid-2000s MTV show The Hills, oh, that's right, he's The Hills, not Laguna Beach, I guess, Pratt slipped...
Who you calling mid?
Oh my God. Pratt slipped into relative obscurity. Politico is so cunty. Following the blaze that destroyed the Palisades and the Eaton Fire, which on the same day tore through huge swaths of Altadena, a community north of the city's downtown, Pratt inserted himself into the debate over how to rebuild in the wake of the fires. In posts to his 2 million followers on social media, he argued vehemently against calls for denser housing in the fire-stricken areas and railed against Bass and Newsom. And like, I hear you, but like, he is, even though he is a celebrity or a kind of celebrity, he is still a constituent. So when you say inserted himself into the debate, well, I wouldn't say he inserted himself. He is someone who was directly affected by this. He is a voter and he has every right to speak on this, and it just happens that it annoyed you because he has 2 million followers, right? So I don't agree with that. And I again, from afar as I was watching him, I was like, my initial thought when he started being really vocal about the fires, I was like, oh, great, Spencer Pratt finally doing something for good, not just for Spencer Pratt. And then when I saw this announcement today, I was like, I really hope he doesn't make me eat my words. Doug Herman, a campaign strategist for Bass, struck back at Pratt's criticisms and his decision to enter the race. It's no shock that in advance of his imminent book release, a reality TV villain who once staged a fake divorce to boost ratings and spent the last summer spewing post-fire misinformation and disinformation to pump up his social media following would now announce he's running for mayor. And that is cutting. I mean, if I was on Team Bass, I would say no comment. I wouldn't even, give a response that heated. Because to me, when you're giving a response that heated, like there is a part of you that is a little bit worried. But let's see when his book is coming out and what his book is about. Okay, so it's coming out end of this month. So yeah, announcing that you are running for mayor 20 days before your book comes out is not great. It's very, dare I say, Cory Booker of you. Oh my God, the name of the book.
At least he put in the paperwork.
He did put in the paperwork, but I mean, anyone can put in the paperwork. Putting the paperwork to run for public office is the easiest part of running for office. You don't have to do barely anything. I did that like in my pajamas on my bed. That was by far the easiest part of the campaign. That initial paperwork to get you on the page of publicly announced candidates. So yeah, it's Spencer Pratt. the guy you love to hate, Confessions from a Reality TV Villain. So again, it is, giving Donald Trump. In this explosive, wildly entertaining memoir, Spencer Pratt charts his rise and fall as America's most notorious reality TV villain on the Hills, and how, from the ashes of the Pacific Palisades fires, he's finally ready for his redemption arc. And so obviously, this serves exactly the narrative of his memoir. And again, this is upsetting because, this is exactly what you don't do if you're someone who's already in the public eye and you have a genuine interest in public service. Oh my God. I'm so glad I ran for mayor last year. But again, of course, had I seen this mess, I probably wouldn't run for mayor because I would be like, well, no one's going to take it seriously now. Again, you gotta have your finger on the pulse, BBs. You gotta have your finger on the pulse. Damn. So crazy. All right. And the last one is Trisha Paytas, who, again, is so beloved by her followers. And as one of the commenters on her Instagram said, basically anything that Trisha sets out to do, she does, which is a quality that we want in our elected officials. I don't know that just and I don't know. I'm torn because she announced it by, eating rice out of Tupperware by Googling how to run for Congress, which part of me hated that. But the other part of me was all right, well, that's what you do. So that's certainly what I did. What do you need to do when you run for mayor? I don't think there's any shame in just Googling that and making that part of your decision. But again, please take this seriously. This is from The Hill. Influencer Trisha Paytas weighs bid for congressional seat in 2026. In her new video called 2026 Manifestations, all right, the singer shared that she would love to run for a U.S. House of Representatives seat in California, where she lives with her family. I know it sounds so crazy to me too, she told her followers. I really want to be able to truly make a difference because I see so much horrible stuff happening in the world and happening right here in California as well. And at least when you look up Trisha Paytas, she has a little bit of a history of being charitable. I know she made a rather large donation to a nonprofit supporting the transgender community last year. I know she's raised money for the wildfires as well, for victims of the wildfires through the Entertainment Community Fund. She is known for being an advocate of sorts, suicide prevention, animal rights, stuff like that. So, again, it's not especially when you listen to, I was I want to just confirm that's the podcast I listened to. I'm pretty sure. Again, I don't want to bash people's campaigns, but I'm just hoping that it's with the right intentions. Yes.
I actually really like this.
I was hers is probably the one that is she out of is the one that feels most genuine. What are you seeing that you really like?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course you're going to back the woman.
No, that's not true.
If she were to win office, the quote-unquote freaky singer said her primary goal be to raise the age requirement for participating in adult entertainment to 25.
So that's the main thing that you like. I mean, again, I don't think it's one of the most pressing issues California is facing, but it makes sense with her.
It's a place that so many people come to engage in the adult industry.
Right. Well, and the thing is, one of the things I think that is most interesting for her as a candidate is that she has a background as a sex worker, and I think it would be really nice and refreshing. And it actually, sex workers have a long history of advocacy and stuff, and I think are forced to, because there is such a stigma surrounding sex work, I think they are forced to understand legislation more than the average person. So I do think that is one of the more interesting things. In the Hill article, it also says, Trisha Paytas, becoming a mom changed my views. Paytas said she became more concerned about the world after she became a mother in 2022. I think a lot of people will find that relatable. I never thought of myself as a political person until I started having kids and realizing like the world could be just so disastrous and dystopian for real by the time that they get to be adults. I was like, all right, Trish, enough is enough, like shutting it out, being ignorant. If she were to win office, okay, yeah, that's what the one you just said. She said her campaign slogan would be "California could be good," which to me really reminded me of Kat Abou-Ghazaleh's slogan, which is, or I don't know if it's her official slogan, but kind of what she opened her campaign with, which was "What if we didn't suck?" Which I think is like one of her official, if not her official slogan. What if we didn't suck? So it's very much that same energy, but but both of those things are also kind of the same energy of "Make America Great Again," right? So we're kind of just redoing the same idea, but maybe we are redoing that same idea because it is a shared idea. Paytas did not specify which political party she would join, if any. All right. So those are just a handful of people. And again, I think that's, start of the year, people want big things for themselves. And they are deeply affected by things that they think are not going well in government and in politics. And we're going to see a lot more of that. Again, is definitely what I think. Now let's get into our main story, and that is, of course, Venezuela. And we have to talk about, the U.S. going in without the consent of Congress, just going in and
It's real quick.
capturing Maduro. Yes.
Before we move on completely from New York politics,
Right.
there was New York municipal politics, I should say.
Oh, you want to talk about your girl, Lindsey Boylan?
I mean, the one political announcement I was actually excited for. Someone
Right.
who I think can do some damn good in this city.
I know. I didn't. I was like, that's like such a small, if any, percentage of our listenership. I was like, I feel like I've inundated people in 2025 with municipal politics for New York City specifically. But yes, Lindsey Boylan, who was on GWF and who is, the loudest of the Andrew Cuomo survivors.
The dream team, if you will.
Yeah, the dream.
Don't rank evil Andrew Cuomo team.
Yeah, but big part of the dream team, who I've already been in talks with, as far as making sure that Mamdani is supported during his term as the mayor. And I've already reached out to Lindsey and offered her my assistance when I saw that she is running for city council in District 3. She's running right now, and if you're confused, like, oh, I thought the elections just happened, they did. But what's happening is there is a special election happening right now because District 3 this is Eric Botcher, right? That's who she's taking over for, I believe. District 3 is Eric Botcher, who is was running for Senate was running for Congress a couple weeks ago, but has now pivoted and is running for Senate. So his seat will be open. I believe that's who District 3 is, and she would be taking over for. I'm pretty Eric Botcher. I'm right. And I actually was just at a fundraiser for Eric Botcher a couple weeks ago when he was running for Congress, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm running for Senate now. But yeah, so that's District 3. So his seat would be open. All right. So if you're in New York and you're interested, live in District 3, or if you're just a New Yorker in general and you're interested in helping Lindsey Boylan, make sure to follow her on Instagram, and you can reach out and you can be part of, getting petition signatures for her, fundraising for her, phone baking for her, whatever that might entail. I'll definitely be, assisting her in ways that I can in the coming days. All right. The main story is Venezuela. What's really up? Let's go to Politico doing some good reporting this year. Oh wait, I don't want this is the Q&A one. I don't want the Q&A one. I hate the Q&A one. What's up So everyone pretty much knows this. US went in, captured Maduro. This is a problem, number one, because Congress didn't okay it. The president does not have the power to just do things like this. And yes, I know that a lot of Venezuelan people have been like, wow, we are so happy. Americans need to stop talking about it. They have no idea what's going on in Venezuela. First of all, we understand that Maduro was an evil dictator. Like, no one's saying that he wasn't. But unfortunately, like, we're talking about this from the perspective of being Americans, where it's like we've seen this story before. And while it might be good momentarily that we got Maduro out, what is not good is, like, number one, the future for Venezuela. Like, it's like, let's see how the U.S. takes care of this. And number two, it's like, if you think that the U.S. is really going into Venezuela for pure humanitarian purposes, well, then I have a swimming pool in Florida I'd like to sell you, because have you been paying attention at all? Like, I actually did research on if the U.S. has ever historically done something for pure humanitarian purposes. And let me tell you, the internet was struggling to give me any results. This is what they came out, with. They were like, basically no, but here are some examples that could be more humanitarian than they were not. Instances I saw was 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami relief, which is often cited as the best example of the U.S. actually showing up in a mostly humanitarian way. We sent massive aid. We sent naval assets, logistics, medical support. There was no regime change, no war, no extraction of resources. Genuinely, millions of people were actually helped. But because there's no, we got to get something out of it. It massively boosted U.S. standing in Southeast Asia. It strengthened military access and goodwill, and it countered China's regional influence at a critical moment. Another example, it was the 2014-2016 Ebola response in West Africa, where, thousands of U.S. medical personnel were deployed. We built treatment centers, trained locals. We slowed the epidemic of Ebola. But it also served us because the U.S. wanted to prevent the global spread of Ebola, which I think it's like, okay, well, like that is humanitarian still, even if it's humanitarian for us. So, like, that being a reason doesn't even really bother me. But it also stabilized fragile regions that could have collapsed and reinforced U.S. leadership in global health governance. So to me, that one is like, oh, that's pretty humanitarian. Then they go into, like, the Berlin airlift in 1948 and 49. But I think that was, kind of a Cold War strategy, and then various, like, earthquake, hurricane, flood relief. So that kind of thing. So, again, just historically, really very little times when the U.S. is like, we're just going to help you out of the goodness of our hearts. Donald Trump did not get formal authorization from Congress. The U.S. Constitution, as a reminder, does give Congress the sole power to declare war. Not that we've declared war, but and for the Venezuela operation, there is no record of a congressional authorization for use of military force, which is important. Lawmakers on both sides have criticized the administration for bypassing Congress and said that the president did not seek approval or notification in advance, and that's from PolitiFact. Some inside and outside government claim that presidents can use military force in certain situations under the Constitution and the War Powers Resolution, even without formal congressional approval. The president has constitutional authority as commander-in-chief to direct the armed forces, especially if acting defensively to protect U.S. personnel or interests. Some proponents argue that this could be extended to actions like arrests of individuals indicted under U.S. law. And a few lawmakers have suggested the mission could fall under this limited authority, which again, limited authority, things that haven't been used in decades, that is the game plan for Donald Trump for this entire term, though that interpretation is highly contested. And the War Powers Resolution was passed in 1973. This requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying U.S. forces into hostilities and withdraw forces within 60 days if Congress doesn't authorize it. This resolution was not used as formal authorization here. The administration apparently did not give advance notification, and Congress was not consulted first. So even defenders and executive authority don't point to a clear statutory authorization. And apart from that, it's like, what's our game plan here? Is it anything, why are we doing this? Why all of a sudden this, obsession with Venezuela? Number one, obviously oil. And number two, distraction from the Epstein files, one would say. I watched this really long video on Instagram. It's like a learning account. What is this? I want to find this woman's name. It's like something Learn. And she does a whole like school lesson style video about it. It's called Unlearn 16 on Instagram. It's Joanna Johnson. And she did a really long video on it, basically kind of saying like, yes, this is definitely primarily about oil, specifically Exxon, and them claiming that Venezuela owes them millions, if not billions, I have to look back, of dollars. But beyond oil and oil money, she went into the BRICS countries and how, and this was something I didn't fully understand, but how before watching this video, I mean, I don't fully understand it now, but basically she was talking about how oil is traded in U.S. currency, and that is what petrol is. Obviously, we all heard petrol before. I didn't know that that was like the currency through which oil is traded, and that is an American currency, and that the BRICS countries have been kind of trading and like selling oil to each other, I guess, without like bullying or without the U.S. involved. And that bothers the U.S. because we like to be the big dick swinging country in everything. And so the BRICS nations doing this without us is a huge problem. And being in charge of the Venezuelan oil supply would allow us to be like the main power in oil moving forward. As a reminder, BRICS is an economic bloc of 10 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. So that's what I kind of dove into, but you can watch the long form video on Unlearn 16 if you're interested. Yes, Michael.
I actually did watch that entire video, and
It's good.
The whole time I was waiting for her to go, girl, if you out here. Have you seen that girl?
No.
There's like some lesbian who looks kind of like Justin Bieber, who's always like, where my girl at though? I want to take care of you. Make sure you feel safe and protected. It's just so funny. And I kept the haircut was the dead giveaway. Yeah, look, I did see another video from another channel that said this could be the answer to everything, right? Because we take over this $9 trillion in oil reserves that are staying there. That's not real, by the way. Just so you know. Like, I don't know if she covered this in the
I didn't hear 9 trillion as the number, but
no, I saw like cartoonishly large numbers. And basically like what kept happening is like, if you look at the chain of command for the oil reserves that may or may not exist, it's like, so OPEC says that member states in OPEC, like, tell them how many barrels that they're refining each year. Everyone self-reports. You go into Venezuela, says...
I love a self-report.
Right, but Venezuela says, you have to go to like our energy commission or whatever, and then you talk to them, and they'll be like, look, Hugo Chavez told us to inflate these numbers to make it seem like communism was working. 20 years ago, and no one has ever checked the book since, and it would be crazy if we actually corrected them at this point. So who knows how much oil they even have. But if they do actually have these crazy stockpiles, that if we were to completely, take this over and, like we're saying, use United States tax dollars to pay for the infrastructure to get that oil up out of the ground and give that to the ExxonMobil company that went and set up that infrastructure, pre-Chavez regime, then maybe we could see $1 per gallon gas again in America. And it's like, if that actually happens, that could bring down the cost of the supply chain, right? Everything could be that much cheaper to move point A to point B. And that brings down prices, that slows inflation.
Yeah, but right. But again, it's still completely self-serving for America. And that is why, like, I know a lot of Venezuelans are like pushing back and saying, like, you don't know what we've been through under Maduro. And I do not know firsthand what you went through under Maduro. I've read a lot about what it's like to live under a dictator. I'm not interested. I'm sure it was absolutely horrific. But what I don't want to happen to the Venezuelan people is have one bad person replaced by another bad situation. And that is what I am afraid is going to happen.
Well, I mean, the opposition leader that's taking over is the one who won the Nobel Peace Prize when Trump said, hey, you should really pass that up and throw a protest so that I can win the Nobel Peace Prize.
But Machado is now saying that she would gladly, she's like basically, just publicly saying great things about him. And like, that's also, Joanna goes into that in the video. It's about like how she is, immediately, she's in cahoots with Trump and was like, ready and raring to go to be placed into that position.
Well, she also talked about, 6 months ago, how she's very excited to open up Venezuela's relationship with Israel and deepen and strengthen the connections. And once she is installed as the opposition leader, her first step will be to, take a trip down to Israel and have a meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, because Venezuela and Israel need to get on the same page. And I'm sure none of this has to do with the fact that Venezuela was, or I think still is technically right now, one of the 7 countries to not have a Rothschild-controlled central bank. But that's probably got nothing to do with why there's a regime change going on. I did see though there were some Venezuelans who were interviewed the day that it happened, and they were like, look, everyone keeps saying America only wants our oil, America only wants our oil. What the hell do you think the Russians and Chinese wanted from us? Like, they also wanted our oil, and they were making shady deals with a corrupt dictator, to like, we're going to pay you in Chinese yuan, and, probably pay you into accounts that are not going into the state's coffers, but Maduro's coffers, So it's like, look, if you're getting 20% of all of the oil that's going to America, and, you actually get to see that money and it helps build infrastructure and build up a country, then this could, in theory, be a good thing. I don't think the opposition leader that is going to be installed and is going to be a Trump flunky is going to be good for them. But
yeah, I certainly don't think so. Okay. But yeah, no, I mean, I guess we'll see. And I mean, I'm glad that they don't have Maduro at the helm anymore, but I just hope that things get better. And again, I just don't trust the U.S. for like just doing shit out of the goodness of our heart.
No, it's never the goodness of our heart, but this might be good for America for once. Like Iraq and the entire war in Iraq, the entire war in Afghanistan, it was good for Pfizer, it was good for Halliburton, it was good for the weapons manufacturers, but it was really detrimental to the American people. This seems like the first time in at least my lifetime that a military action could directly benefit the day-to-day lives of Americans. And it's like, if that's what we're using our military for now, sure, maybe we're the villains, but let's make things affordable here.
It's also crazy because every like kind of like article that is a breakdown of what happened in Venezuela, they're all interviews, which is like, I've never seen that before. Like the core breakdown of like what went down, which is like what I usually like to start a topic. Everything I'm seeing is like an interview with one specific person, which is not really what I want to do. Oh, is this like behind the scenes of our Nicolás Maduro front page? This is Times Insider. Oh my goodness. I I don't want a story of him being walked to jail. I just want like, what are your actual thoughts on like what is going on? So, well, here, this is from 5 hours ago. This is from the New York Times. Trump's Venezuela moves pose a challenge for GOP in Congress. Republicans have cheered the raid that ousted Nicolás Maduro, but toiled to square their longstanding views with President Trump's unclear and rapidly evolving strategy. This is by Robert Jimison, who covers foreign policy and defense issues in Congress. President Trump's abrupt move to attack Venezuela, oust its leader, and seize its oil has thrust Republicans in Congress into an awkward spot, leaving them with major unanswered questions and toiling to reconcile their positions with his rapidly evolving whims and messages about what should come next. At issue is not whether capturing President Nicolás Maduro was the right move. Republicans have almost universally cheered Mr. Trump's pressure campaign on Venezuela and welcomed the military raid that removed Mr. Maduro and his wife and sent them to the United States to face criminal charges. But many Republicans have tied themselves in knots over the past few days to avoid contradicting or seeming to criticize Mr. Trump while confronting major questions about who should govern Venezuela, whether Washington is pursuing regime change there, and how deeply involved the United States should be and for how long in shaping the country's future. We are not at war, Speaker Mike Johnson said on Monday. We do not have U.S. armed forces in Venezuela. Because we're doing airstrikes, and we are not occupying that country. He rejected the suggestion that the United States was engaging in nation building there. This is not a regime change, he said. This is a demand for a change of behavior by a regime. You see how he changed that there? Mr. Trump, though, made no such distinction. Hours after the raid, he said at a news conference on Saturday that the United States would, quote, run the country until a safe, proper, and judicious transition of power could be arranged, raising the prospect of an open-ended military commitment. He did not say whether U.S. forces would occupy Venezuela, although he added that he was not afraid of boots on the ground. In an interview with The Atlantic, the president said that rebuilding there and regime change, anything you want to call it, is better than what you have right now. Can't get any worse. Oh, famous last words. Details of the Trump administration plan for Venezuela, laid out for lawmakers in briefings on Wednesday by administration officials, underscored the disconnect. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described a multi-phase strategy to stabilize the country, restructure its economy, and support the installation of a new government, suggesting a sustained U.S. involvement well beyond the narrow law enforcement operation some Republicans have endorsed. The dissonance is unlikely to translate into a meaningful Republican break with the White House, despite some misgivings about the administration's messaging and uncertainty around its objectives. Few Republicans appear poised to side with Democrats on Thursday on a resolution that would require Mr. Trump to seek congressional authorization before any further military action in Venezuela. But the conflicting messages are the latest and perhaps starkest example of how Republicans in Congress have labored to adapt to foreign policy in the age of Mr. Trump, when the party's hawkish bent has been replaced by an America First aversion to overseas military action, except when the president decides otherwise. Except when the president decides that it could serve him and his friends personally. In Mr. Trump's Washington, foreign policy positions change quickly, and red lines can be erased or redrawn if the circumstances demand it. It has left some Republicans in Congress at pains to get on the same page with a White House that pivots quickly and seemingly without concern for whether the shifts could unsettle or alienate voters. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're MAGA, because this is his second term. MAGA loves it. MAGA loves what I'm doing. MAGA loves everything I do, Mr. Trump told NBC News when asked about how his political base would respond to the moves in Venezuela. MAGA is me. MAGA loves everything I do, and I love everything I do too. I mean, okay, from one dictator to another, Trump to Maduro. Maduro to Trump. Yet the operation in Venezuela has exposed unmistakable cracks in his coalition. Former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the far-right Republican who resigned on Monday, slammed the operation as what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. Other Republicans have raised sharp questions about what will come next. For years, 3 South Florida Republicans, Representatives Mario Diaz-Balart, Maria Elvira Salazar and Carlos Jimenez have promoted Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Prize-winning opposition leader, as the alternative to Mr. Maduro, describing her as the rightful leader of a democratic Venezuela. The three introduced a resolution recognizing Ms. Machado as the legitimate opposition presidential candidate, and Senator Rick Scott of Florida, a Republican, introduced a similar one. Yet Mr. Trump has opted to allow Delcy Rodriguez, Mr. Maduro's vice president and longtime confidant, to become the interim president of Venezuela. Mr. Trump's relationship with Ms. Machado has soured, and his top advisors argued that Ms. Rodriguez would provide the continuity needed to keep the country functioning. The decision has unsettled Republicans who have spent years portraying Mr. Maduro and his lieutenants as illegitimate. She was never a duly elected vice president, Mr. Scott said on Tuesday. She was part of Maduro's stealing of the election. He cautioned that her leadership was conditional, saying she's going to do what Mr. Trump wants or she won't be in the position. Mr. Scott expressed I think that would be true for anyone in that position, Machado or her. Mr. Scott expressed optimism that Ms. Machado would eventually be elected to lead the country. Mr. Trump has appeared less interested in a future where Ms. Machado leads a democratic Venezuela. He has so far not spoken with her, and over the weekend publicly cast doubt on her political viability. I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader, he said at a news conference hours after Mr. Maduro's capture. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country, he added. Beyond uncertainty over future leadership, questions about the nature of U.S. involvement have divided Republicans on Capitol Hill and in the White House. In the immediate aftermath of the raid, which the Trump administration carried out without informing congressional leaders or top lawmakers on the intelligence committees, Republican leaders in the House and Senate tried to keep expectations narrow. Representative Brian Mast of Florida, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, said on Monday that the operation was not protracted, but a limited, swift action that did not resemble other interventions. And while Republican lawmakers have emphasized that there are no U.S. troops on the ground in Venezuela, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has declined to rule out future military involvement, saying during an interview with Real America's Voice that the administration would not specify what we will or will not do. Senator Mike Lee, a Utah Republican who had initially raised constitutional concerns about the justification for a military raid carried out without congressional authorization, said Mr. Rubio had said that he anticipated no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody. But that was hours before Mr. Trump said the United States would, quote, run Venezuela. And in the days since, the president has repeatedly described American involvement as open-ended. In remarks to NBC News on Monday, he suggested that elections would not occur anytime soon and that stabilizing Venezuela could take a long time, signaling a lengthy U.S. presence in the oil-rich South American country. That contrast has unsettled lawmakers across the Republican Party. Senator Susan Collins of Maine said ahead of Wednesday's briefing with administration officials that she needed more clarity. I want to know what the plan is, she said. I don't understand what the president means when he says that we will, quote, run Venezuela. The Venezuelans ought to run Venezuela. Others have tried to strike a middle ground. Senator Jim Justice of West Virginia said that he was unbelievably in favor of what the president did and supported limited involvement in which the United States would serve as the guiding light and not maybe the controlling light. Even senators normally inclined to reflexively defend Mr. Trump have been cautious. Asked whether the United States was pursuing regime change, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana said that it was, quote, too early to tell. All right. And then going into the oil, I'm just trying to see a little bit more about this.
Wait, explain how it's not regime change. We have their president in lockup. Well, how could it be anything but regime change?
Well, I know it's Mike Johnson mincing words. I mean, did you see that sentence that he said? He was like, Mike Johnson basically said, it's not a regime change, it's a change of regime. And you're like, that's gaslighting. That's gaslighting, baby. All right. And then the New York Times also put out earlier today this article about oil firms say Venezuela owes them billions over earlier investments. So now companies like ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips, or is it Conoco or Conoco? Conoco? I don't know. Phillips say that that Venezuela owes them billions of dollars for confiscating their assets 2 decades ago. Let's see. I don't read this whole thing, but like in the mid-2000s, the Chavez government demanded that oil companies accept a smaller stake in Venezuela projects without compensation. Most foreign companies left the country rather than accept the new terms. And ConocoPhillips' claims against Venezuela add up to $12 billion, while ExxonMobil, the largest U.S. oil company, has said the country owes it an estimated $20 billion. Chevron is the only U.S. Oil company that stayed in Venezuela. That gambit has put it in a potential position to reap a significant reward as the Trump administration presses the country to accept greater U.S. investment. ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and other companies have spent years trying to make Venezuela pay through international arbitration and cases in U.S. courts.
Couple things on that today. Well, one, we have a caller on the line who says that this is not, in fact, a dick swing competition, but it's about economic sustainability. And then
For the U.S.? Okay.
This is just what the caller is saying in the call screening that I've gotten.
Uh-huh.
And then the other thing I was seeing earlier today was that essentially China has spent trillions of dollars on the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but like they've essentially gone through Africa, parts of South America, parts of the Middle East, and spent a ton of money on infrastructure projects for these different places. Like famously, we built the airport in Greenland because China was going to if we didn't, right?
Okay, yeah. I was like, international policy is definitely not my area of expertise. But
so
yes, go
they've
on.
spent a ton of money in Venezuela specifically, and they're now saying, like, we're getting our money back. They said we're like Trump's exact quote. He said, Xi is not going to be a problem on this one. And Xi said, yeah, right. I'm getting 10,000 lawyers and we're going to hold you up. And they said that Venezuela is going to be the biggest test case for American imperialism coming forward, because if they can get just one court to uphold the contracts that are in place by China with the Maduro regime, despite the fact the regime change happened, it's going to make it very, very, very costly for the United States in the long run.
Fun.
But yeah, do you want to get the caller on?
Sure. Yes.
Let's.
Do we have a name?
Yes, it's Hillary, and Hillary, you're on the line. Can you hear me?
love this day of female callers. Hello, Hillary. I feel like you've called into the show before because I always remember a Hillary.
Yeah, I have actually.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I just wanted to make a few points. My father actually worked for American Oil back when they were in Venezuela. And actually went through the whole, like, you guys have to get the fuck out type of thing.
Right.
And so, like, there's so many different versions of oil, right? So, like, there's heavy oil, there's natural gas, there's all this type of stuff. So, like, the oil quality and the refinery quality of the oil in Venezuela is a complete mismatch. So, like, this isn't really about so much, like, because the U.S. already exports the most amount of oil in the world, like this whole thing about BRICS, like all that kind of stuff. But like this is all about holding power and withholding oil from other countries, right? So China buys Venezuelan oil about, I don't know, 5 to 7%. And so like I just wanted to like make the point that like it's not really so much about like who has a bigger dick, and it's more about like figuring out the U.S. economic situation. And it's also like, I think it was Mike, it could have been you, but I think it was Mike, was like mentioning like, it'll help the American people and it'll go down $1. Like it won't. The cost of actually like getting these oil refineries back up and running will cost trillions of dollars. And it's not going to be helpful for Americans at all. It's actually going to increase American crude prices. This is all about having leverage over BRICS countries, because obviously they're not using the US dollar, and that's a whole other conversation, yada, yada. But it's like about strengthening the US economy in contention with BRICS. That's all I really have to say.
So you think it's definitely more economy based than power based is basically your argument?
I would say it's a blend of both, right? Like the current administration, everything is about power, but ultimately it will fuel the economy because the administration is actually losing the economic battle. Like you can boast that, yeah, the market's as high as it's ever been, yada, 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 the economy's strong, but like you can only stand on those lies for as long as you can stand on them, right? Like until it falls. The market is as high as it's been because you're overprinting money, and like this has to come to a head at some point. Taking Venezuela's oil will assist when this does come to a head, because then we will have this in reserve. You can sell that oil that you didn't earn, right? You haven't paid anything for it, right? You literally stole something and now you're reselling it, right? So that's going to help you economically in terms of selling. But ultimately, this is, yes, about power, but more so about economic sustainability in the long term for the American government.
Okay, I was like, but then did you see? And this was reported by Aaron Parnas, and like I was going to play the video right after I get off the phone with you, but I'm trying. I haven't. This only came out today, so I can't find it, in other things yet. But I mean, Aaron Parnas is like, as far as like independent journalists go, he's pretty respected, and he's saying that it was revealed that Trump was going to put this oil money in offshore's accounts, meaning that it wouldn't even be like funneling back to the U.S. Like if that turns out to be true, what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, if that turns out to be true, then that would definitely put a chink in my argument. But I've read about the idea of, yeah, he's going to put it in offshore and it will go actually back to the Venezuelan people. And then there's some sort of agreement that Venezuela will then only trade with America,
right?
Which again comes back to economic fluctuation.
Right.
If they're only trading with the U.S., right? So I stole your oil. The money I made off of what I stole from you is still coming back to me.
Right.
But if that agreement, falls through and that doesn't happen, then yeah, like, I don't know shit. But
right. I mean, and again, some of these reporters, like especially ones that you're, that are breaking news before, New York Times or whatever, I'm kind of like, how does one even get this in? I mean, I guess he has, tipsters or something, or knows people on the inside that he's able to get this information. Obviously, he has millions of people following him. But yeah, I mean, I'll keep following that story because so much was coming out today, and it was just like video after video. But again, I do try to wait until something is backed up in one of these more like establishment news sources. Otherwise, I don't even know what to say. But thank you so much. That is a lot of good information. Thank you for calling in, Hillary.
Yeah, I'll call in again soon. Have a good one, yeah?
You too. Bye.
All right, now.
So yeah, let me just play this because like when I play other people's content, that's fine. We're not knocked on YouTube, like when it's not a news report, when it's just like a guy, right? There's no copyright on that. Correct, Mike? Can't hear you, but
if it's a monetized YouTube video, then yeah, we kind of would be.
Well, it's on Instagram.
Oh, it's on Instagram, then it's fine.
Okay, because it's Aaron Parnas. Again, this is like, he's an independent reporter and an attorney. He's just at Aaron Parnas on Instagram. He has 2 million followers. His email is right there if you disagree with anything he has to say. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was quite interesting. This was something he put on today. Let me just put my phone up to here. United States, yeah.
We have some news right now. According to Lisa Desjardins at PBS NewsHour, the Trump administration told senators today about Venezuela that they plan on not putting any money raised from sale of Venezuelan oil into U.S. Treasury accounts. Instead, to put them into so-called offshore accounts that presumably Donald Trump will personally manage, as he announced yesterday. This would be a stunning development. The money that would be raised after selling Venezuelan oil would not go into the U.S. Treasury and not into bank accounts inside the United States Treasury, but rather bank accounts outside the U.S. Treasury. The question remains, why? Sources told her today that they understood these as similarly or decidedly, quote, offshore accounts. So if what the president is saying is that he will personally control this money will not be in an American bank account. potentially over $3 billion if we sell it at market price and we get 50 million barrels of oil. There are a lot of questions that are being raised right now on Capitol Hill. I'll provide you more updates as we get more information.
So and so for that one, actually, he did credit his source, which is the Lisa, long last name with a D, at PBS. But again, this is like, it's not coming. Is this coming up? Let me, if I just search by this name. Is she writing articles? PBS does not have a strong. Wait, I feel PBS's search engine is like results or whatever you call it are very weak. They just like never come up. I'm not seeing this on PBS. All right, but anyway, that was his source. So again, that's a video that he posted like right before I came to the studio today. So I did think that was interesting. And then as far as Venezuela being a decoy for Epstein, I mean, at this point, basically anything that the Trump administration does, people are going to say is a decoy from the Epstein files. Whether or not that's true, I don't know what to tell you, but something to back up that thought, or at least just follow up with what's going on with the Epstein files since we are in the new calendar year. This is from Time, from yesterday. Less than 1% of the Epstein files have been released, the DOJ says. This is by Connor Green. More than 2 weeks after the deadline for the release of all files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, top Department of Justice officials have disclosed that more than 99% of the materials have not yet been made public. Attorney General Pam Bondi and then also, and this was like, this was something, I consumed so much news today, but I also heard that someone was in the room with Trump behind closed doors and heard him freaking out and said, like, if the Republicans don't, like, if we don't win the midterms, I am going to get impeached. So food for thought. But Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche wrote in an update to a federal judge who oversaw the case against Epstein's case on Monday that over 2 million documents remain in various phases of review and redaction. According to the letter, the DOJ has released roughly 12,285 documents to date, totaling around 125,575 pages of material. The officials reiterated that the review of the remaining files will require an enormous undertaking, estimating that around 400 lawyers will dedicate all or a substantial portion of their workday to comply with the law Congress passed in November to compel the materials release, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, for the next few weeks ahead. They added that more than 100 specially trained document analysts with experience handling sensitive victim materials from the Federal Bureau of Investigation will be assisting. And you know how deeply this administration cares about victims. The DOJ has faced criticism from lawmakers and Epstein survivors over its failure to release all the files by the December 19th deadline. On that date, the department released an initial incomplete batch of records saying that the hundreds of thousands more were expected to come in the weeks ahead. More documents and images were released in additional batches in the following days. All right, so this is kind of going on and on. There's, Chuck Schumer's criticizing them, yada, yada, yada. But, basically it's kind of like, hey, it's a new year and this is what's going on with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and just, lest we forget. All right, now let's go into girl part 2. I kind of broke it up like that. I don't know, new year, trying something different. We'll do the main story in the middle. I don't know. Just a couple things that I wanted to talk about here. First is, and we touched on it earlier with chaos in Minneapolis, but Tim Walz, and there was whispers of this, but he's officially ended his campaign for re-election, which is like, this to me is like such an American politician story. I would love examples of anyone who is like loved for their entire political career, because it's a very short list. And like, I guess, definitely something I remind myself of every time I get sad that my mayoral campaign came to a halt. I do, not that I want to be liked, but I certainly don't want to be like someone who at one point does something that like deeply hurts many people, which it seems like it's just happens in politics. And that sucks. But this is from CNN. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz ends re-election bid amid welfare fraud scandal. And we'll also get an update after this on Nick Shirley, because last week it was definitely, and many news sources were kind of reporting on him like, wow, he like changed the game. And then that dynamic quickly changed about what level of journalist he was. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz dropped his re-election bid for a third term Monday as a welfare fraud scandal in his state has intensified and become a political flashpoint seized upon by President Donald Trump. I can't give a political campaign my all, Walz told reporters at the state capitol in St. Paul. Every minute that I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who want to prey on our differences. To me, which is like, okay, that feels noble, but if you were able to defend the people of Minnesota properly and get them justice, wouldn't that in and of itself as the incumbent, and when you're the incumbent, you have to do way less campaigning than when you're not. So wouldn't that in of itself be a wildly strong campaign? To me, it's like he just realizes that it's going to be very hard for him to win with this scandal because as the governor, a lot of the burden is being placed upon him, and he would rather control the messaging around that than lose. Like, that's what it feels like to me, because it's like, yes, like if I'm just reading this statement, I agree that. I love that. I love the sentiment. But again, when you're the incumbent, continuing to do a great job at your job is the campaign. It really is. You don't have to campaign nearly as hard when you're in the incumbent, but when something like this happens, that leaves a hole for other people to try and get your job from you. Like, that doesn't really, people don't waste a ton of campaign money usually, and we'll see if that climate changes in Mamdani's America. But usually people don't spend a lot of time and energy trying to campaign against an incumbent unless there are so many people, as we saw here in New York City with Eric Adams, who are deeply unhappy with the incumbent. So, like, who has announced run for Minnesota governor so far? Like, what's the list? Are we, can you try and pull up a full list of like names that we would know? Oh, here, NPR News has this. Let's just see who. So Klobuchar, said she might be considering a run, but that's not 100% yet. And okay, so here's this. So Peggy Bennett, Lisa DeMuth, Scott Jensen, Jeff Johnson. These are like former senators, state reps, city council members, former mixed martial artist. I can't really say anything about stand-up comedian. Oh, of course, famously, Mike Lindell.
Okay, yeah, well, come on. Who's the mixed martial artist?
Brad Kohler.
Even I've never heard of him.
Yeah, he looks like by the looks of it, let me tell you, it looks like he hasn't done mixed martial art in quite some time. Either that or the mixes, he's mixing it with slices of pizza because it's not looking good. A retired naval intelligence officer. And again, so like Amy Klobuchar would be like a real, like that would be like, okay, if she's running against Tim Walz, that would be actually something. None of these other people really seem like they have any name recognition. But again, it's these long lists of people in this day and age who are tossing their hat into the ring. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13 if we're, so almost exactly to the number of people that I said we would be seeing in almost every election. 12 seems to be the magic number in this anything goes, in this anything goes political world that we have right now. All right. So again, and Amy hasn't officially announced, but I think now that Tim has officially said, I'm not doing it, it really leaves a pathway for someone with name recognition and donors like the way she is, because these other people, and none of them look, unless one of them turns out to be Zohran Mamdani the second, we don't know. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz dropped his reelection bid. Walz read from a prepared statement and walked away without taking questions. And I think also adding to that, now Trump trying to blame him for the assassination of Melissa Hortman. I mean, I think that also, if you want to get into what's going on behind the scenes there, I think that it's not been a great year for Tim Walz, but I also think obviously with him being the VP pick for Kamala, that also put a target on him, Walz, the Democratic nominee for vice president in 2024, reached his decision after spending the weekend discussing his plans with friends and advisors. He met with Minnesota State Senator Amy Klobuchar on Sunday. Two people familiar with the matter told CNN as the Democratic senator decides whether to jump in the governor's race. Klobuchar, who was reelected to a fourth term in 2024, has been getting a lot of outreach, encouraging her to run, a person close to her told CNN, and is seriously considering it. Klobuchar did not respond to a request for the comment about that meeting. She's a former prosecutor in Minneapolis and serves in Senate leadership, but over the years has privately expressed interest in being governor and serving as a chief executive. The senator sought the Democratic presidential nomination in 2020. For Walz, 61, the announcement capped a rapid rise and fall on the national scene after former Vice President Kamala Harris selected him to be her running mate during their abbreviated presidential race. Walz relished in the role of attack dog, with his blistering critiques of Trump becoming a soundtrack for Democrats during the campaign. A deepening federal probe into a fraud scandal in Minnesota complicated Walz's bid for an unprecedented third term. He has not been accused of any wrongdoing, but Republicans have sought to blame Walz and Democrats for the massive abuse of taxpayer dollars. It was the recent criticism from the Trump administration and right-wing allies that Walz said contributed to his decision not to seek re-election. For the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of this state's generosity, Walz said. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis. Well, that's the American way. Walz has been criticized for his administration's oversight of the welfare programs. Several Democrats in the state privately cautioned Walz against seeking re-election as outrage intensified in Minnesota and beyond over the misuse of funds. Minnesota officials have until January 6th to provide the Trump administration with information about providers and parents who receive federal funds for child care. And it goes a little bit on and on with some more quotes, but that's basically the meat of what we needed to know. And then as a sister piece to this, we do have, a New Yorker piece on Nick Shirley called Fault Lines, what a viral YouTube video says about the future of journalism. And this is by J. Caspian King. We've definitely read articles by J. Caspian King on here before. A streamer's investigation of fraud in Minnesota garnered millions of views. His content was questionable, but his methods will likely inspire scores of imitators. And I think that's important because we're going to see a lot of imitation. If there's a singular success, you will always see imitation. So we're going to see it with Zohran Mamdani. And I know you're probably so sick of hearing his name, but I'm just telling you, it's so kind of a huge change in politics. And Nick Shirley again, and Nick Shirley is far more more dangerous, I think, than Zohran Mamdani, because it's like, at least like you have to run for office and we still have control, whereas anyone can upload information onto the internet and then it is left to people to decipher whether it is, true or not. And like, yeah, people who have the facts and people with more experience in journalism can quote unquote fact check it. But the problem is, because we have lost faith, or many people have lost faith in traditional journalists and traditional ways of accessing information, just the same as we have lost faith in establishment politicians. That's why you see an influx of these people. And again, certainly one of the biggest problems in politics is the spread of misinformation, and certainly one of the biggest problems in America. So this is very interesting, and I think extremely without a country centric. Oh God, I love it. They let me read the article for 5 seconds and then they make me. Sorry, I gotta go to my secret pathway to get into this. 1 second. But I just thought kind of this as the closing piece would be very without a country for today. All right. So who is more likely to uphold journalism's ideals of uncovering inconvenient truths, holding the powerful to account, and writing the first draft of history? A handful of decaying, unwieldy legacy news organizations, or a million YouTubers? Nick Shirley, a 23-year-old YouTuber whose investigation into millions of dollars of alleged daycare fraud in Minneapolis has drawn praise from Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, and Kash Patel, the FBI director, might look at first glance like the future of journalism. In a video posted on X the day after Christmas, and keep in mind, this is by someone who is employed as a journalist, so if we want to talk about bias, but I just keep it in mind. Shirley combines two of the foundational modes of live streaming circa 2025, the man on the street interview and the thrill-seeking adventure into an unknown and ostensibly dangerous place, whether the Mongolian steppe or a tent encampment in Philadelphia, to produce a roughly hour-long narrative. He adopts the role of a guy who simply wants to know more about a problem, going from daycare center to daycare center in Minnesota and asking the people who work there, all of whom are Somali origin, if they're the ones stealing taxpayer money. In Shirley's most viral scene, which has been clipped and shared millions of times, he walks up to a storefront with the misspelled sign reading Quality Leering Center, which we talked about last week. According to Shirley's investigative partner for the video, a man who he refers to only as David, this daycare has been licensed to care for 99 children and received $4 million in taxpayer funding. In a surreal moment, Shirley and David are confronted by a woman in the parking lot who mistakes them for federal immigration agents and starts yelling to anyone who might be inside, "Don't open up, you have ICE here." To which Shirley responds, "How do you have ICE here, ma'am? I'm literally a YouTuber." Fun, misinformation, fighting misinformation. The rest of the video is more of the same. Shirley walks into buildings, sometimes under the guise of trying to enroll his fictional son, little Joey, into the daycare, and then interviews the people he finds there, whether workers or random passersby. If you're among the credulous who believe there's no political motivation behind Shirley's reportage, there's a thrill to watching all this unfold, especially because Shirley presents himself as just some dude on a quest for the truth. He is quite talented in this role, for what it's worth. The best on-camera investigators often come across as Shirley does, curious, a bit slow, and pathologically stubborn about asking the same questions over and over. After Shirley posted the video, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune visited the same daycare centers and also combed through court filings and state enforcement records. They found no evidence of fraud, although a few of the centers had incurred other violations, particularly Quality Learning Center, which the Star-Tribune notes has been cited for multiple safety violations. This doesn't mean that daycare fraud has not taken place in Minneapolis. There's a years-long history of such malfeasance, and both state and federal law enforcement have convicted dozens of offenders, as Kash Patel subsequently pointed out. But the reason that we, and I imagine Shirley, know that this has been going on for a while is because local news outlets have indeed reported on it. Last week, the Republican Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives said that her caucus had worked with Shirley to point out daycares to visit, a claim that raises questions about whether Shirley really was just a YouTuber on an independent search for the truth, or if he could have been acting on behalf of the Minnesota State GOP. On X, Shirley insisted that this was completely false, adding, "I have no idea who this lady is." Exactly what someone working for the GOP would say. Over the weekend, The Intercept published a piece pointing to evidence.
And Tim Pool had no idea where that 100,000 a week was coming from to do ad reads for Russia.
Oh my God, Jesus. It's pointing to the evidence that the man called David in the video is David Hawk, whom the Intercept identified as a political operative with connections to the Minnesota State House. Well, I mean, like, if you're an operative and your name is literally David, why would they be calling you David in the video? How dumb are these people? A few days later, the Trump administration paused federal payments to daycares around the country, a policy that will affect countless children and families. Was this a good faith attempt by the government to root out fraud, which they learned about from Shirley? Well, they wouldn't have. Also, like, Shirley didn't break this story. We traced it back to the original news source, which was like a smaller news source that originally broke this story. So that's not even true. Shirley expanded it greatly and got lots more eyes on it, but he didn't break the story. Or are Republicans simply using this moment to cut yet another federal spending program? And also, we could look at it as a way, like, Trump loves to take down his enemies, even if it's just someone who has personally slighted him. And Tim Walz has certainly given him a headache, and spoken out against him publicly a lot. After all, as Patel noted, the FBI has been aware of fraud in Minnesota for years, which we know that's been, publicly talked about. It's been a problem for a long time. Journalism isn't a patent office. You don't get credit only for being first. And Shirley, for better or worse, has shown a giant spotlight on an ongoing story, which has led to things that journalists often want out of their stories. More of the public was informed about a problem, and the powers supposedly responsible were held to account. And he really tapped into something, as we've talked about, here, is by covering it in a more accessible way, i.e. YouTuber, you're going to get more eyes on it and different eyes on it, right? Not people who normally consume stories like this, which is very smart of him. On Monday, or of the GOP, on Monday, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who has borne much of the public blame for failing to prevent fraud in the state, announced he would not be running for the third term. On X, Shirley wrote, "I ended Tim Walz." Cool. Whether Minnesota had done enough to address that fraud can and should be a point of debate. I suppose it's also worth asking if the story had garnered enough national attention, though I'm not sure why fraud in Minnesota would be a headline news across the country. Well, that is a lot of fraud. But what Shirley and his cheerleaders have suggested is that he uncovered this fraud on his own because liberals in the government and the media were covering it up. Well, he didn't uncover it on his own again. Like, he didn't. He found something that wasn't being talked about it enough and elevated it for sure. But he did not break this news. Musk spent the better part of 2 days reposting reactions to the video, some of them falsely claiming that nearly every prominent news organization, The Times, CNN, The Washington Post, had failed to report at all prior to Shirley's video on the Minnesota fraud story. And again, yes, it could be one of those instances where you make a story so big that even if it's a story that the left or the right, but in this case, the left doesn't want to shine a light on, you force them to. Because again, that's, there's not a ton of misinformation circulating in major news sources, but there is a ton of exclusion happening, which is, a different way to not get the news to you. The implication was that the woke media wants to protect criminal immigrants and feckless liberal politicians, most notably Walz, who supposedly let it all take place. Musk, who owns X, wants to promote the belief that the truth can be found on social media and that the practitioners of real journalism are allegedly independent amateurs, such as Shirley, who can ask questions without being cowed by the woke agenda. Shirley's video gained a lot of traction because it was promoted by some of the most powerful and followed accounts on social media, but it went mega viral because of its form. It's true that local and national news reported on fraud in Minnesota, but there's nothing quite like watching a secret get revealed on video. Yeah, it's like people need to understand storytelling in a new way, because now that actually creative people have access to an audience in the same way that news traditionally has, news has to get a lot more creative. Otherwise, they will get buried, and they've already started to get buried. Which is why people listen to things like podcasts or like Theo Vaughn or Joe Rogan for news instead of the news. It has become the news. Especially if you believe that everyone is trying to suppress it. The reality is that traditional investigative journalism is a frequently boring and frustrating endeavor that takes a lot of time, money, and patience. And exactly. And a lot of times it's like, let me break this huge story when I only have a couple pieces of information because I'm not an actual journalist. Therefore, I don't have to keep my job, uphold the same tenets of journalistic integrity. And I think journalism, or even using the word journalist, or even, we're going to have to start we have those like notices on social media as a correction, but we're going to have to start doing a lot more with this, distrust in government and journalism. Again, like that's how people like this are going to keep getting publicity and being the people to break these stories. A lot of effort is expended tracking down paperwork from public record requests or looking through LinkedIn profiles to find people who might have worked together or knocking on the doors of potential sources. When the work is done and enters the world, there's a decent chance that the reporting garners relatively little attention. Print media outlets, at least the types of places that can still afford investigative desks, are often sclerotic, quasi-puritanical institutions that discourage their practitioners from too much self-promotion or marketing. Television news has always had a different approach to investigative work, attempting to engineer dramatic confrontations between the person or institution under scrutiny and the intrepid reporter. Local news has dined out for decades on the spectacle of the journalist marching into the shady business and demanding why the frozen meat has been stored in a mop bucket or whatever. National networks, for their part, have produced news magazine shows that specialize in filming similarly dramatic face-to-face encounters. During 3 years as a television news correspondent, I quickly learned that the point of everything I did was to make the person sitting across from me as uncomfortable as possible. In the past few years, this approach has made its way to YouTube, Twitch, and the other live streaming sites. The vast majority of political content online is still commentary, running the full gamut from the socialist Hassan Piker to the white nationalist Nick Fuentes. But a handful of creators like Shirley have turned the tropes of the TV news investigation into millions of streaming views. The style, credibility, and sanity of these programs vary widely. Candace Owens, for example, has investigated, in quotes, everything from the assassination of Charlie Kirk to whether Emmanuel Macron's wife is actually a man. Owens mostly does her talking from behind a desk. Shirley, though, uses techniques that resemble the popular and notorious reality show To Catch a Predator from the mid-2000s, on which the host, Chris Hansen, would confront potential sexual predators. And he has aped the look and feel of Michael Moore's intimate, low-budget documentary, Roger and Me, from 1989. Moore's documentary, like Shirley's video, mostly features a casually dressed man talking to people in a Midwestern city during winter. The seeming authenticity of that formula perfectly serves the social media narrative that the truth can come only from streamers and YouTubers. This insurrectionary narrative about the media is not restricted to the right. In the world of sports, Pablo Torre, who spent more than a decade at ESPN, has captivated fans with his own version of the video investigation. CoffeeZilla, a YouTuber with more than 4 million subscribers, regularly uncovers scams, as he puts it. An important demystifying truth has been revealed through all of this. Investigative journalism is mostly about persistence, and it can, in fact, be done by amateurs, sometimes carefully and well, and sometimes not. Just as the streaming and TikTok booms flooded the streets of New York City with hundreds of aspiring influencers who asked passersby what they did for a living or who rated passersby on a scale of 1 to 10, Shirley and his fellow independent journalists will likely inspire others to turn themselves into one-man local documentary news units. In the week following Shirley's viral video, a host of copycats went out to daycare facilities around the country and posted their own videos. They tended to be even less thorough than Shirley, who at least had David around to show some paperwork. Everything from blacked out windows, which, as anyone with children in a major city knows, are common for daycares, to empty facilities on New Year's Eve were presented as supposed proof of fraud and corruption. I imagine these gonzo investigations will propagate and that by summer we will see thousands of Nick Shirleys asking questions about small business loans, public school funding, and the moon landing. Some will be scrupulous, others will be broker into conspiracy and flagrant lies. But most will probably look something like Shirley's synthesis of TikTok, TV news, and Michael Moore. There is something inherently arresting about watching a poorly dressed, insistent person barging into places where they're not invited, particularly if you think they're uncovering something that will dovetail exactly with your political beliefs. What's more, the people in charge of actual institutions of power, the vice president, the FBI director, the attorney general, seem hell-bent on having Nick Shirley or someone like him replace the legacy media. This past weekend, Shirley and a host of other right-wing independent media accounts, and this goes hand in hand with Trump letting a bunch of influencers and podcasters into the White House press room. He's been in a constant attack against mainstream press since day one. Shared images that allegedly showed Venezuelans in the streets celebrating the capture of President Nicolás Maduro by American armed forces. Many of these images were either AI generated or taken from some other event entirely. Shirley posted a video of a handful of happy people in Miami and wrote, "World Cup style celebrations are erupting all across Venezuela at the moment. Congratulations to the people of Venezuela." Before we hail the glory of independent media and toss those crotchety investigative reporters and editors to the unemployment lines, I would ask again the question that began this column, slightly rephrased this time. Do a million YouTube investigators actually constitute a freer media, or are they more likely to bend with the political winds blown by the most powerful people in this country, who seem eager to prop up an endless, self-generating supply of content creators as the next fount of truth? In this media environment, the government doesn't even have to produce its own propaganda. It simply needs to direct the public to someone who is already doing the job for them. So again, very without a country. And, if you're seeing something first from like a YouTuber or a content creator and you're thinking to yourself, wow, like why hasn't the New York Times reported this? Why hasn't Fox News even reported this yet? Maybe ask yourself it's because those outlets are actually doing the proper checks and balances to make sure that the story is legitimate before they're putting it out for public consumption. And, everything that needn't be a race. And just because something's out first doesn't mean something is out best. Last quick thing that I'm going to say is, that RFK Jr. did put out a new food pyramid, new year, new food pyramid, new dietary guidelines. Today he had a press conference where, red meat, cheese, vegetables, and fruit are pictured at the top. Kennedy described the guidelines as the most significant reset on nutrition policy in history, calling for an end to policies that promote highly refined foods that are harmful to health. The guidelines will set limits on added sugar and encourage diets that include meat and dairy. Protein and healthy fats are essential and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. He called for a dramatic reduction in the consumption of highly processed foods laden with refined carbohydrates, added sugars, excess sodium, unhealthy fats, and chemical additives. And while I agree with him that it's great to really be outspoken about the dangers of highly processed foods, I don't know that meat and cheese, like at the top of the pyramid, is, and things like full fat milk, are exactly what we need. And just as everything, I do question what deals were made behind the scenes or what promises were made to fund, big dairy, big meat. Veggie I can't. I think it's pretty like across the board that vegetables are really good for you. But it says, though most Americans don't read the dietary guidelines, they are highly influential in determining what's served in school meals and on military bases, as well as what's included in federal food aid for mothers and infants, as the guidelines set targets for calories and nutrients. So just wanted to update everyone on that in case you are a follower of the food pyramid. Although from previous iterations of the food pyramid, methinks we can't really trust the food pyramid. Yes, Michael.
So I can't take credit for this, but Danny Polishchuk had a pretty good take on this one. He said,
about the liberals getting fat.
Yeah, he said you're just going to poison liberals because they're liberals are going to become malnourished because they refuse to accept anything that this administration puts out. So it's like, I guess we're just going full Twinkies.
Right.
Like nothing pictured here is actually good for me because RFK says it's good for me.
Well, that would be a good, again, the Republicans do strategize in a way that the Democrats are unable to. So if the strategy is to let's get Republicans as strong and healthy as possible, and let's kill off liberals. We're already killing off ourselves by not having children. So let's really fast track this by having them say, you know what, refined carbohydrates must be the way to go. Not a bad strategy there. And on that note, thank you so much for being here. You guys, I'm looking forward to a wonderful 2026 with you. If you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/withoutacountry. And please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel for Without a Country. So helpful. We have been building a bigger and bigger community every single week, which I'm so proud of. And make sure to follow me on social media at Philanthropy Gal. And of course, Without a Country podcast, specifically for this podcast. I'm going to try to break up my politics and comedy a little bit more. And so going to post things more specific to this show just on the Without a Country podcast Instagram if you're not already following that one. Mike, do you have anything to promote?
Yes, January 31st, we have Deadly Duos at the Tropicana in Atlantic City. Come on out. TheArmoredLeague.com for tickets. It's going to be a very fun one.
All right. Amazing. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And yeah, let's go spend some time investigative journalisting and look for Shelley Miscavige. Have a great rest of your week. Be kind to one another, but not in an Ellen DeGeneres way, like in a real way. Love you. Bye.